Good morning. Climate, a word that is now consistently in our thoughts and our minds, something that cannot be ignored as a conspiracy theory, a whim of some scientists or environmental activists. Whether you believe in climate change or not, the climate is without a doubt fickle and more extreme than ever before and simply is changing. Climate is a term that is not just about tropical storms or long-lasting severe droughts, but a term that reflects our social, cultural, financial, spiritual and work environment. I am no expert on climate change and therefore I'm not going to talk about that today. I am, however, an expert on putting on festivals and events that change perceptions, strengthen communities, educate and inspire, and create positive change to people's way of being in their everyday lives. I was fortunate enough to grow up on a farm in the heart of Waikato with parents that were liberal thinking and conservation minded. An unusual situation to say the least, with a father that milked the cows twice a day but would be prepared to go and chain himself to our trees to preserve our dwindling native forests back in the 70s. My father was a pioneer in many ways, and it was his quiet, unassuming passion for doing what he believed in that gave direction for my own journey. My first intentions when I left school were to become a park ranger, but after doing a pre-university course, my young and curious mind led me down another path, a path where I needed to be surrounded by people in a far more stimulating and social climate. I did a number of jobs over 5 years here in Auckland with the end goal to save enough dollars to head off on my great Kiwi tradition of my OE. And it was the following 7 years that was the epoch in my life that truly embedded my love and ongoing passion towards music, outdoor parties and festivals with vibrant international communities. I did not take the typical route with the end goal being London, but my free-spirited nature allowed me to follow my nose, and should I end up there, then I was meant to be. Some have found God, but I found Goa, which became my second home in India. How could I not be drawn to an underground scene of off-the-radar sub-tribes of travellers gathering from around the world to a dance to a specific style of music that reflected the very unique vibe of Goa. We were jet-set hippies with one goal in mind, to follow the party wherever she may be. And so I did, and I lived my life between Amsterdam, Zurich, Vienna, where I was based during the European summers and then back off to Goa during the European winters. In 1992 Goa season, I started to DJ, which kept me on the pulse of the latest music coming out of the studios and onto the DAT tapes, which was the medium for music swapping, collecting and playing at the time. There I am. So young. From here I was signed up by an agent who booked me into a number of gigs over the next 5 years where I DJ'd around Europe on the outdoor party scene. Most of these parties were held in some breathtaking venues, from castles in the mountains of Switzerland to monasteries in former East Germany. I observed at the time how far ahead these countries were with their thinking around recycling at these events. Deposit systems on bottles, recycling bins and a general good attitude to the land around them was apparent. Leave no trace was common practice. I simply fell in love with the privileged opportunity I had to be part of this community through dance, music and creativity in these stunning historical and natural environments. When I wasn't DJing, I was sight and set dressing at parties with high-tech acrylic material that was UV reactive and perfect for creating 3D sculptures for psychedelic environments. At the time, I was importing a cool range of clothing, Natty Tat, from my good friend back here in New Zealand, Pip Russell. These stunning original tattoo designs created by her were screen printed on festival attire that was popular with my community. No sooner would the gear touch down in Switzerland before it was snatched up by eager festival crews that adorned these Aotearoa designs. I was quite simply on a hedonistic world, DJing, dancing, decorating and discovering my creative essence and connecting with a like-minded community that were the foundations of my future. But like all burgeoning cultures comes change. As Goa became popular and the media plucked it out of the underground, there were notable shift in the music and the vibe, with some dark undercurrents creeping into the landscape. The social climate in Goa had shifted, and I was ready to shift back home. In the time I was away, I returned home to New Zealand for a couple of visits. Despite the expanding hole in the ozone layer, the New Zealand social, cultural and environmental climate seemingly appeared good, and I was ready to find my own way to inject my own bit of magic back into our beautiful land and solidify my international experience, connections and stories. So December 1997, I landed back in Auckland. And my eyes and ears were opened up, and I was surrounded by an abundance of talented musicians, DJs, street artists, VJs, performers, jewellery and prop and stage designers who were all doing some exciting work both here in Auckland and throughout the country. I wanted to be the conduit and the connector for these people locally and internationally, and I started my own talent agency, Mycelium, which I seem to have missed out, but that's okay, we'll just go back to there. I was excited what the New Zealand creative community had to offer, and with international networks still pulsing, I was invited to DJ in San Francisco for the launch of Blue Room record label with the after party at the world's most extraordinary event, Burning Man, a festival that is founded on 10 principles of radical inclusion, gifting, decommodification, radical self-reliance and self-expression, communal effort, civic responsibility, participation, immediacy, and leave no trace. It was order and chaos, where inhibitions dissolved and freedom of creative expression knew no limits. This was probably one of the most influential turning points in my creative direction. I realised immediately that I had found my new tribe, that this was next level after Goa, and my creative soul was dialed to max. I was hooked and bursting at the seams to spread the word back home and find a way to integrate some of the Burning Man principles into my passion for parties and events at this stage. On my return, I called in the various crews, N-Train, Cyberculture and Cog Transmissions, and proposed we make an outdoor New Year's Eve party. It was a given that we would find the right location and launch our own collective story together to introduce fresh ears to new music while incorporating a wider community of fringe performers and cutting-edge visuals. Finding the perfect location was no easy feat. Many days were spent trawling the countryside to find the right place that wouldn't attract authorities or disturb locals. And 3 weeks before the gates were due to open, we secured a reserve out on the west coast of Auckland called Kiriatahi. In the meantime, the perfect name was found for our baby, Splore. The definition of Splore could not be more defining: merrymaking festivities, carousing and frolicking, or a good going session. And the first Splore and many more to come were all of that and much more. The first Splore was a wonderful grassroots experience with near to 1,000 people attending. It was fun and a rewarding dusty gathering that we did for the love, but where the roots of Splore were laid. But I had a business to run and other things to do, so I shelved it for the time being. I remember a distinct moment when I had been back in New Zealand, not been back in New Zealand so long, and all was not so rosy in New Zealand. A change in government had opened up logging on native forests on the west coast of the South Island to help with supposed economic growth. What the hell? Wasn't that what my father had fought for back in the 70s? Weren't the 6% of our native forests and national parks secure from rape and pillage? Apparently not. Cue time to put the environmental activist hat on and get on with work with protests and petitions. Unfortunately, the fight to preserve our environment, human and animal rights, both locally and internationally, hasn't ceased. And we continue to be signing petitions, writing submissions, and going on marches. In 1999, Mycelium not only promoted the creative community, but was engaged by other events to be involved on a production level. I worked in a production capacity on WOMAD, Pacifica, Festival of Asia, the first Lantern Festival, and other council community-based events. I was establishing myself as an event producer who was prepared to push creative boundaries. I pulled together a Kiwi crew and took them back to Burning Man. We took out the first Zorb in New Zealand and participated in an experimental performing arts piece called Futura Deluxe, curated by a San Francisco crew. Participating and contributing at Burning Man was the best way to fully immerse oneself in this unique culture. The Leave No Trace mantra was deeply embedded in the attitudes of the community. I never saw a cigarette butt or a piece of trash anywhere. Take it in, take it out was the only way. I wanted to find a way to make that mantra here in New Zealand sing, but that happened further down the line. Returning to New Zealand, I was approached by an entrepreneurial young man called Morgan Sybil, now a renowned jeweller designer of Zoe and Morgan fame, who suggested that we carry on doing Splore, and he was prepared to take the risk with me. Hell yeah, I couldn't resist a good party, so we gathered the team and started planning Splore for Splore February 2000, which was the only Splore that was not 3 days. At the same time, I partnered with established production manager Alan Green, and we were the three musketeers ready to take Splore up a notch with multiple zones of music, performance and street art. And so it happened, and it was good. And so we made it bigger in 2001, and it took it back to 3 days. At this point, I'm not going to give you a year-by-year account of Splore, but rather an overview of how the 16 years, it was the foundation of who I am and why I'm here today. Venues changed, people changed, the culture changed, and Splore became a full-blown music and arts festival in 2002. And the definition from my old friend Ray Castle sums up what a festival should be perfectly. The ultimate Genesis organic format, not party, not concert, not club, but immersive sessions over several days in which you marinate and participate in music and art culture and realignment experience. My own creative niche came through for my love of flags, fabrics and patterns blew up. I produced a collection that was installed in the UK at the Big Chill Festival, followed by Burning Man 2000 and 2001. En route home from Burning Man September in 2001, something happened in America which really changed my perception on going back there, and I came home to put my energy back into my time here in New Zealand. I was engaged as a set designer for Waitakere City's Trash to Fashion Awards, a flagship event for the eco-city that promoted the reduce, reuse, recycle message through turning waste into wearable art, an inspiring educational community event that was open to everyone from school children to established designers and artists. 2002 was one of my big breaks when I was appointed the Trash to Fashion creative director for 3 event cycles. I loved the opportunity to work with professional choreographers and theatre practitioners and create an arts experience with strong environmental message. 8 categories were presented throughout the show, interspersed with artistically performed interludes, which followed a continuous narrative. I distinctly remember Trash to Fashion 2004 when the theme was centred around e-waste. Delving into what happened on a global scale with e-waste and technology was a really rude awakening. Not just the end product, but the frightening amount of resources that need to be extracted out of our earth to build our phones, our TVs and computers was actually incomprehensible. At the same time, the climate change and global warming were hitting mainstream media. Parallel import tariffs were removed and access to cheap imported mass-produced products and cars was becoming the norm here in New Zealand. My epiphany was at the time that we are conditioned, educated and rewarded to live beyond the systems of nature. A lot of us expect and feel entitled to a lifestyle that the planet, nature's systems cannot afford us. If we work hard, we can have the houses, the cars, the boats, the batch. I decided to pull my head out of the sand and stop being part of the problem and start being part of the solution. In our busy lives, concentrating on the micro, it is easy to overlook the bigger picture. The Earth and its atmosphere is a closed loop. The only thing that goes out is the old rocket, and the only thing that comes back in is the old meteorite. And back to Splore, 2002. We found a new home on the east coast of the Firth of Thames at Waharau Regional Park. An enormous amount of work went into convincing the park rangers and ARC councillors that we were professional, trustworthy and environmentally focused before we got the stamp of approval to stage the first of many Splores in their parks. Terms and conditions were stringent, and any foot out of line was likely to see us close down. The setting was magical, and content we introduced was really cutting edge, with geodesic domes, Burning Man performance troops, classical Indian musicians collaborating with New Zealand electronica artists, Lightning Man shooting 2-metre high lightning bolts from his Tesla coil, and the first Splore art trail had the first site-specific works that represented an array of artists. Recycling of all waste was sorted on site, even though finding a waste management company to even provide the bins and skips we needed was difficult. But it was always part of what we did with Splore: leave no trace or leave only your footprints. Local residents didn't like us having the fun didn't like the fun we were generating, and we were unable to secure the site for Splore 2003, forcing us to go biennial. A lot of negotiation with council and a promise to the locals that this would be our last time, and we were back in 2004 with another Splore-specific multi-arts festival was delivered. The Splore community was starting to grow. However, we didn't sell enough tickets, gave away too many comps, and boom, 30k in debt. I was tapped on the shoulder by a friend who suggested I approach John Minty as a potential business partner who was at the time running the Galatos music venue. I was fortunate that John was very interested, and within 3 months the papers had been signed, the creditors had been paid, and Splore was back in action, albeit a new venue needed to be secured. But the team from the Southern Regional Parks quite liked us and suggested there was a lovely beachside park just 11 kilometres up the road called Te Papakanga that might be suitable. Finally, Splore had found its forever home, although not without its challenges. Artistically, this was the critical point for Splore in 2006 when we received CNZ funding for the Arts and Performance Program and were able to put a dedicated focus on commissioning emerging and established artists, designers, architects and filmmakers to create site-specific works. John introduced a fresh lineup of urban styles of music, and Splore officially became family-friendly. Tangata whenua, Ngāti Pawa and Ngāti Whananga were involved in telling their history through arts, storytelling and tikanga. The community was expanding and the Splore kaupapa was truly alive as more people were drawn to this cultural incubator. First and foremost, looking after the whenua was a priority, and the festival platform is a community for change. We come to festivals for community, to live simply and to celebrate people, place and program. Festivals are places where you can temporarily leave your normal life behind, leave the default world, unplug from the matrix and try on a different way of life. Festivals are places where we share experiences, where the more you share, the better it gets. Splore is a festival that transcends our everyday experience and has always had sustainability as part of the story. After many years of trying to be the sustainability manager and festival director, we finally engaged a sustainability manager, Dave Watson, to apply a dedicated expert focus and take Splore over the hump from intent to coordinated action. We set goals to create new pathways to reach our community and make it easy. Stakeholders, sponsors and crew and the Splore community were informed of fundamental changes with the introduction of the Global Reusable Cup, not just a cup but a system of common sense that prevented 55,000 one-use cups going to landfill. The site was spotless and people reconnected with the old concept of value in keeping things. We brought back dishwashing to Splore for a little touch of retro that is here again to keep the globulates in circulation and offer another positive point of engagement. Carpooling was incentivised, and 25% less vehicles meant 25% less CO2 emissions. The Splore community saved money, shared, met new people, and engaged with a carpooling as a solution. Composting toilets became the most desirable place to do your business, and manned waste stations took the confusion out of where to put what, and 90% diversion from landfill was achieved. The Splore community responded and took pride in their place, literally telling others to pick up what they had dropped. Splore had made a stand and got over the hump, and sustainable practice was now seen as a value proposition and not a cost. It is now part of what Splore does and not just another thing to do. Splore has set a benchmark and is an example for other festivals to follow. In 2014, it was recognised as one of the 36 greenest festivals in the world by winning an International Greener Festival Award. So Splore 2014 was my last as festival director. I knew the time had come for me to pass the baton and pursue other opportunities while doing good work on this planet. My baby had matured nicely and didn't need me to be at the helm any longer. Dave and I took the sustainable wins from Splore and joined forces at Green Shoot Pacific New Zealand. We support other festivals, venues, sporting events, film production, conferences and local government with sustainability services and change. The current climate in New Zealand has never been better to use events to demonstrate pathways of behaviour that result in great environmental and social outcomes. Events can be models for knowledge and experience to be taken into other aspects of society that benefits the micro and the macro. And on that note, remember, the Earth and its atmosphere is a closed loop. The only thing that goes out is the old rocket, and the only thing that comes in is the odd meteorite. Thank you.